Racing. The need for speed, adrenaline, exotic cars and challenge. All of these things were provided in Lotus 3, the ultimate challenge. It was a racing game developed by Magnetic Fields and published by Gremlin Graphics. Originally made for the Amiga and released in 1992, it was later ported to MS-DOS in 1993. Lotus is a racing game from an era before the full 3D modeled cars, and as such uses 2D sprites for almost everything, except for level geometry similar to Mario Kart or Wacky Wheels. However, unlike those, it had an extra advantage. The game engine allowed for different track heights, meaning you could incorporate hills, which was pretty neat back at the time. It wasn't as impressive as full 3D environments, but it was good enough for the hardware it was designed for. Lotus starts with some credits so that you know who made the game, and after that it plays a short animation of a car heading your way to drive you over, showing the Lotus logo as the last thing before you die. It then switches over to another animation of a car magazine and finally goes into a demo mode. Just press a key and get into the main menu. From here you can select how many players will drive fancy cars, their names, controls and such. You can select between the time trial or championship mode, course set, and of course play around with the REX system. REX stood for Racing Environment Construction Set, which in short allowed you to generate random levels based on a lot of sliders. You could control the amounts of curves, hills, scenery density, obstacles, difficulty and types of maps. Based on those settings, it also generated a code which essentially was a level seed, so you could revisit the generated tracks or share the codes with others. You could also define up to 9 custom races this way and race them one after another. This was a pretty cool feature as it added a lot of replayability to the game, while requiring zero map editing skills. But how is the gameplay itself? Well, after starting the game you can choose one of the 3 Lotus cars, the Esprit S4, the Elan SE or the M200. After that, play with one of the most awesome track selection screens and select a tune from a choice of 6. The music of this game is absolutely phenomenal, especially the main theme, which has been remixed and covered a lot. However, the Amiga version music, at least in my opinion, is the superior one. Don't get me wrong, the music is still awesome, but the Amiga version sounds so much better. The Amiga version also had extra tunes that played on the loading screens and after the race, but those are completely cut from the MS-DOS version. Boo. Choosing track 0 will disable music, but enable sound effects. It's a really weird decision. I think you could easily have both at the same time. But what about the gameplay and driving itself? Well, it's primitive and very arcadey. Driving gives you the feeling of going really fast forward, which is neat, but you have little control over steering left and right. The cars turn very slow. It gets really noticeable when you're trying to get past the computer opponents, which brings another issue I have with the game, and that the collisions suck. Trying to overtake other cars usually ends up with you bouncing off them, slowing down, and them disappearing on the horizon. It doesn't matter whether you ram full speed into them or just barely scrape the pixels, you're gonna fly around while they enjoy the first place. And it doesn't work the other way around. Enemies have no problem taking you over, and I never saw them bumping me from behind. And it's not just enemy cars that are obstacles, because every level has its own dangers. 13 different, as the game calls them, scenarios to choose from, bringing tons of variety to each race. from autobahns and road constructions to deserts, foggy forests and futuristic cities. Each one of them has a unique twist to it. Autobahns allow you to drive in the oncoming traffic lane, dodging cars. Futuristic cities have turbo zones and energy grids that slow you down. Forest levels have rocks and water on the road, as well as piles of wood that might send you flying through the air. Construction zones are littered with warning signs, foggy levels where you see very little ahead of yourselves, and even rainy tracks where the steering is much more sensitive and you slide a little bit. The variety they managed to pack into this game is really amazing, as each track seed you generate can be placed in every scenario, giving the game a ton of replayability. You can play in one of two modes, Championship or Time Trial. Time Trial is pretty straightforward. You're given a certain amount of time at the start, and driving through checkpoints extends it. So don't run out of time and get to the finish line to get to the next race. You get bonus points for speed and time left. Other cars also drive around, but this mode doesn't care about your position. It's a system that worked well for arcade races. Championship, however, is all about position and about not running out of fuel. You're gonna face 20 other races, so it gets a little crowded. Instead of time though, the resource you wanna look out for is fuel. Thankfully, there are pit stops at which you can refill your gas tank. Unfortunately, this means that the opponents have a chance of taking you over while you're on a break. It can be pretty hard and frustrating at times, but for the most part it's pretty freaking sweet. I personally didn't mind if I lost a race when I played this game. I mean, it's all for points, there are no unlocks. The sense of great speed is its own reward. I'd love for the game to feature more than 3 cars though. I get that it's limited to Lotus cars, but seriously, just 3? There is such a disproportion between the number of tracks you can drive on and the number of drivable cars, it's really disappointing. Overall, it was a pretty memorable game, not as good as I remember it to be, but fun to play nonetheless. If you get the chance, give it a go and try it for yourself, or at least listen to the soundtrack somewhere on the internet, as it's pretty freaking sweet. My name has been TRG and thanks for watching. You can also check out some other retro videos, and I do a lot of indie games, so if you like those things, watch them, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.